Thank you all. And some of you might remember the days of traveling and bad internet connections. I had just arrived in Paris and gonna have to have the camera off, otherwise I will break out. But I'm so delighted to be here, and Maria Mora and I have been on a journey together here since the last year and a half with regards to being appointed and accepted to the EFRAG project. And let me give you a little bit background, first about myself and about IMP, and then about our project, and then turn it over to Maria Mora, who will then stay more focusing on the tagging aspect of things. But one of the things I wanted to say, number one, my name is Liv Watson. I am the digitization strategist at IMP, the Impact Management Project. And for those of you who don't know about the Impact Management Project, it is a project initiated by the G7 and endorsed by the G7 to be able to bring constituents together to speak about how to reduce the noise of sustainability standards in the marketplace. And they have done this for the last 7 years. About a year and a half ago, they said and agreed, as I have begged for digitization for both financial sustainability data most of my career, IMP agreed then to take digitization as a key pillar under their structure network. And what does that mean? The project was led by basically the CEO of all of the sustainability standard setters and major initiatives under IMP. They started to collaborate and communicate. And when you look at the success story, it's quite a success story, is that we are, which I will let you talk a little bit about, as IMP wraps up in March, the impact management platform with the same kind of structure network and some additional new members are taking over the dialogue led by the UN and the UNPN and United Nations and OECD and others. So it's going to be a new initiative, and technology and digitization of sustainability information will be then also embedded into what you hear more and more from the standard setter, thinking digital from the start as they write standards. So under IMP, I then was appointed by the Impact Management Project to represent them to EFRAG, as EFRAG was being appointed to 2 phases. Phase 1, which you see here, which is a final report Maria Mora and I worked on. And I will speak a little bit more about the next phase, more than the first report, as Maria Mora will talk more in detail about that. But basically the mandate to think digital first, when we went to phase 2 of the project, I then was also appointed to lead what they called Cluster 9 format. And why this is important to our topic here today is that under this cluster, we look at not just the digitization thinking first, but we also look at the format. Where is the data going to be located? And our mandate from article in the CSRD is that it should be in the management report. So one of the key things that we are discussing today is how do you tag and organize information that is by the CSRD also supposed to bring it to the level eventually of financial that needs an auditable trail and looking at the data from its life cycle and not just tagging information at the end. There is a large interest now in the European Commission to get this right and thinking digital to the first, as well as having a place of structure that in the management report, etc. So that is what Maria Mora and I do. Basically, most of our life right now is in this quick process that is taking place at EFRAG to come out with a set of recommendation for standards to turn over to a standards board that is being prepared by the EFRAG new governance model, that they are going to have a sustainability standards board. But under IMP, we also, because of the structure network, as many of you have seen, the merger of SASB and others coming under to form the Value Foundation, which will become, by June of next year, the future Sustainability Standards Board under the IFRS Foundation. So IMP has been able to help facilitate this dialogue, and the next phase of this dialogue is going to take place under kind of what's called the impact management platform eventually, but 2 projects, or actually 3 projects at IMP. John can talk a little bit more about that later in his speech. IMP also got funding to move forward toward funding some projects to help the digitization of this information. So what does that mean? Well, the European Commission has appointed the rules and overview to EFRAG. It's looking at how do we help, because each cluster develops standards. Our cluster, María Mora and I, we look at the digitization and how do we help prepare each cluster who's writing proprietary work for standards, that they write them in more descriptive way that lends themselves to digitization. So most of our work now within EFRAG is to focusing on, while they write up their draft standards, that we actually look at how they can digitize. And the next phase, we're also looking at to EFRAG, because volunteers can't design a taxonomy, what it will take for a taxonomy development program to take a role within EFRAG. So with that, I wanted to give just a quick overview, because María Mora will give you more detail, but I will tell you, digitization and the sustainability standard setting is moving in a race car in Europe, and hold on, that car left the station, and this is a reality, and we have a lot of value that we can all bring to help that, because just tagging alone isn't going to help reduce compliance, and we're going to meet many of the same issues that Thomas and FRC talked about there earlier with regards to quality of data. María Mora, I will turn it back to you to see what you would like to add.
No, thank you very much, Liv. Completely agree with Liv. This is becoming, and it has been a journey since a year and a half ago, a very exciting journey, to be honest. So I'm just gonna to remark some of the messages that Liv has just introduced already. So for what we produced last year, which actually drive the new directive, is published at the European Commission website. In there you can find a deep study actually of the need for sustainability standard, and also the direction that it should take, and also the kind of the topics. I just wanted to introduce this document because it's a little bit like the background of where we come from before, and also give some tips of the new direction that actually is where we are right now and working on the next steps of this. I want to actually, remark also the CSRD directive. You know, we came from the NFRD, and this means the evolution of that directive, which was, to be honest with you, one of the big achievements, I will say, from the regulatory sustainability reporting. There was an initial step of a minimum level of standardization, but what was more important also, it was a minimum level of mandatory reporting on this regard, as part also the management report, or as far as I remember, it should be attached as an additional report called the NFRD. report. This proposal of directive is actually as the umbrella of what is coming next and what is going to come. Okay, and in here, in part, was influenced by the EFRAG work last year, that report that you can see before. Meaning that whenever, you know, we need to figure out, to be honest with you, where the new mandatory things are going to come, this will come under this umbrella, at least at the company level, as part of the annual reports or management reports. I think there is also a very important thing here, because the scope of application for a mandatory disclosure on this particular topic is going to expand. It's going to be very exciting to see small, medium-sized companies. Here in the directive, clarify that the idea is to cover the listed SMEs, which actually will expand a lot the number of entities disclosing this sustainability information. Okay, from 11,000 that came from an FRD to 49,000 entities. It's true that some countries in the local transposition actually expand the scope of an FRD. So to some extent, some SMEs. But now under the CSRD, looks like that at European level, this is gonna for sure expand to listed SMEs. That I think it will add bring a lot of new opportunities in terms of data analysis on this regard. But in addition, challenges to address that will be very interesting to, I think, figure out and also address sometime. The area that Liv and myself, we are very focused as part of the EFRAG task force is the digital tagging. It's actually explicit in this directive that digital tagging, so sustainability reporting must come in digital, aligned with this view of that Liv already mentioned, the digital first. And this is really a moment that we are addressing. This is actually the reason why, as part of the cluster that we are looking into detail of the management report, because management report till now, at least in Europe, I know it doesn't happen in the US with the 10K, but in Europe, it has been a little bit like the Pandora's box. Something which is very unstructured. Each country and each company is doing in general that I am aware of disclosing. So I think, and this is in part where we are right now, also trying to structure and digitalize in tagging this kind of information is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but in addition, it will bring potential opportunities, actually, and new ways to increase the data quality. And I'm really looking into this because I think it will be an incredible steps within the area that we are looking at, which is the sustainability reporting and in a regulatory way. I think there is an important point that we cannot forget because it's an incredible part of the data quality as well. The new verification requirements actually the directive makes explicit that there will be there is a need and there will be an standard assurance standard that could cover verification and auditing practice. Still on the definition, the how, but also the relationship with the national level on this regard, because there is a clearly high dependency on this. But actually, if we look at the SF, the Thomas FRC has presented, I always see that, SF is actually still a challenge for on the auditing practice because it's not only an accounting challenge itself, it's also a technical one. this anchoring, the way to, to extend the way that all the verifications should be done, the checks. So I would like to put and remark this part, because I think we will need education in this regard and clear, obviously, directions and directives and standards as well, because it's not only an accounting thing, it's also a technical thing that is getting clear that SF actually is a need as well. And I think the sustainable reporting is coming in the same direction. So everything we learn from SF, I think as much as we can apply in the future here, that's probably for sure. And I don't know, Liv, if you want to add any additional comment or remark any particular message.
I like to just summarize, because you did a good job, I think excellent, and maybe leave room for questioning, is that what will happen next at EFRAG is that we are quickly working on getting what we call 0.0 out the door for, with regards to our thinking around the standards. And we now have also coordinated an expert group, but starting in next year or early next year, many of these reports are going to come out, and they will be looking for feedback. So take part of the dialogue and feedback. But I want to emphasize that it's not really the first phase out the door, developing a bunch of new standards, but rather verifying the current standards and embed them and create a minimum requirement that a new standards board will take forward and have all of the due diligence processes and etc. All of this is proprietary work for this board. And like María Mora said, wow, what a ride. I think last Christmas we worked on the eve before Christmas. So let's hope we get Christmas Eve off this year. But it's been amazing and a lot of people. But Ignacio, thank you for allowing us to bring this topic. And maybe we turn it back to you to see if we have questions.
No, I have a question. Well, first of all, thank you very much to both you for your effort. Today is a day for ladies. It's Anami Rainbow, it's Ana Stiortino, Saskia, Liv, Maria, and they are not any kind of quota or something similar. It's because you are brilliant. The question for me is, we see in the topic of SF that the problem, or one of the problems from a technical point of view, is the learning curve. The experts and the IT providers, everybody needs to test, to learn how to prepare the reports. Do you have some kind of forecast about when we will have something for voluntary reporting to start with the companies to prepare reports with XBRL or with whatever, or with CSV or all the new standards that XBRL is preparing? But this is not the point. The point is when we can ask to the companies to prepare voluntary reports and learn how to make the reports. In which year, maybe?
First of all, I got to give a disclaimer here that what I say represents me and not EFRAG or the European Commission, right? But if you look from
personal feeling,
no personal feeling, I just had to give that disclaimer. But at this stage, right, we are not even at the stage of designing a taxonomy. And what we are working on right now is bringing forward the different ways and options that EFRAG could develop a taxonomy program for this new standard, and what kind of skill set and what kind of budgets and costs are in line. So what do I think from a timeline? Well, when the proposed standards come out, the taxonomy ideally has to come out with it. So that is kind of the challenge. But we also know from a resource perspective that we will have some very serious dialogues here in the first of the year with regards to how does EFRAG approach developing these taxonomies. And ESMA has also been part of the dialogue, and we all agree those kind of decisions has to be done at the European level, because we are, as volunteers, as I put it, or appointed to this task force, we can only ask them and give them advice on how challenging that will be. But if you look at the timeline, answering your question, so Q1, the early Q1 or later Q1, we are to turn over these draft standards that are written very more prescriptive. My biggest challenge when I see at our current state is that there is so much narratives, Ignacio, in the writing. And that challenge of developing best practices in how we tag that in the management report and make that useful in the sustainability statement that's going to be structured in the management report. I think we have to start small and evolve over time. So the recommendation will always be to EFRAG to have the public-private as soon as those taxonomies are there, but we have to solve that, and more timeline on that has to come out and start tests by the end of this year. Not this year, next year. I'm already in 2022, I'm jumping. I've always been ahead of myself, but this time a little too far. But by next year, but the part that we want now is really about explaining what the challenges are. But going back, I know John is speaking later, I don't want to steal his thunder, but because we know that data modeling of this can be so costly, even if we're going to end up with kind of different standards, we need to model these data points in a way that are interoperable. So XBRL is also kickstarting with part of the funding that IMP got with regards to helping the digitization movement, and you'll be part of too, Ignacio. So you will know that's here very shortly. But answering your question is, taxonomy dialogue and program is what Q1 will be about. How, and the standards are coming out, they should come with it, and by this end of the year, next year, hopefully there is a private, similar to what IFRS have today, a consultation group, right? As taxonomies are being developed, we will hope that EFRAG will also create a consultation digitization taxonomy group that will work with them to be able to test. And then obviously ESMA, who's going to be the repository of maybe not collecting, but the mandate for this, and also for the single access point, they write this into a technical regulation. So they will need to have ample time to be able to do that. And I know from what they did with SF, they had a very strong partnership with the marketplace as they were testing their regulatory technology, what do they call it, RTS. When they write them up, they work very much with the marketplace as well. So I know there is a strong interest in doing it, but it's too early to give a date.